I was a big Doctor Who fan during the 1980s, but somehow I never got any of the annuals published during that time. I did get second-hand copies of some of the 1970s annuals, but the 80s ones always eluded me. But now I've finally got hold of a copy of the 1983 annual, published in the gap between Time Flight and Arc of Infinity. So now I can see what I was missing. So if you look inside, you'll see the original owner was Richard R., which is a bit of a coincidence. And there's a publicity shot of the cast there, with Adric cropped out, as he would be from most of the rest of the book. The first text story is Danger Down Below, and it's the longest one at 9 pages. The Doctor and Tegan travel to a barren desert planet. Nyssa remains behind in the TARDIS, as usual. They've come there to investigate the disappearance of the planet's food supplies. Turns out it was the fault of the Migrator, a massive blob from the Andromeda Galaxy, which is protected by an army of little black balls which fly around and protect it. But the Doctor somehow manages to lead the Migrator into the TARDIS and out into deep space. So it's kind of like a cross between Dune and Creature from the Pit, if you can imagine such a thing. It's a very long story, and not one of the best. Next we have Our Neighbours in Space, which is a page of basic astronomical information, as you usually get in these kind of annuals. Then we have some behind-the-scenes pages, which you did not get in the earlier annuals. This one looks at the visual effects department and shows you some designs for the Master's TARDIS from Castrovalva. And there's also an early version of Peter Davison's costume. It's still got the stripy trousers, but the jacket and waistcoat are much more plain. It would have helped him to blend in a bit better. You can imagine John Nathan Turner took one look at it and thought, no, not garish enough, make it brighter. The next story is The God Machine. This opens with a very atmospheric scene of Nyssa and Tegan exploring a pyramid in the middle of a storm. Illuminated by a sky-splitting flash of lightning, the alien ruins opened up before exploring eyes. Having to squint against the driving rain, Nyssa and Tegan registered little before the flash faded and the fleeting image vanished back into the pitch blackness of the planet's night. But what they did see was awe-inspiring. Stretched out below them were streets and avenues of grand buildings hewn from solid blocks of stone, an entire deserted city that had a grace and majesty similar to that of an Incan city of ancient Earth. Witnessing the sight, neither of the girls could help but mentally applaud the skill of the long-dead builders. What impressed them more than anything, though, was the building on the roof of which they now stood, an immense flat-topped pyramid that dwarfed the rest of the ruins, and which at one time must have been a temple or hall of worship to some alien deity. So it's a great start, but sadly Nyssa and Tegan vanish after that, and are not really present for the rest of the story. The Doctor goes searching for them and finds a native tribe using the pyramid to make offerings to their god Vial. But their god turns out to be a race of space pirates who are tricking the natives in order to get their hands on their jewels. The Doctor manages to rescue Nyssa and Tegan, and then just leaves while the natives just murder all the pirates. He doesn't even try to stop them. Coming into land gives you a look at Heathrow Air Traffic Control, which you did not get in Time Flight. What is a light year? Explains just how far a light year is. Then we have another behind-the-scenes feature, looking at the producer, John Nathan Turner, and it explains exactly what he does. It says John commissions professional writers to produce Doctor Who scripts, but he also receives a lot of work submitted by amateurs. He's pleased to help and encourage amateurs if their work shows promise, which might explain some of the amateurish scripts that got made during his time. The Armageddon Chrysalis is one of the best stories in the book. The TARDIS is swallowed up by a massive alien creature, and we get an insight into its thoughts. The thing had been given many names, but men called it Vuovolika. Those who had seen it had compared it with a vision of hell. Vuovolika meant evil. Those who had seen it and felt its touch had died. Vuovolika knew that some were feeling its touch now. A tiny thing called TARDIS. Living beings whose names would come to it soon. Energy. Vuovolika was hungry. Vuovolika was feeding. We also get a look inside the observation room of the TARDIS, with wall-length windows giving views of space. It would be nice to see that in the new show, to be honest. Again, the companions are barely in it, and it's up to the Doctor to get them all out. You get the feeling that the writers hadn't really been briefed on the new companions. But there is a nice mention of Leela as the Doctor struggles to regain consciousness. In the end, he manages to get the creature to expend all its energy, forcing it into suspended animation, kicking the problem down the road so we can deal with it centuries later. On the Planet Isopterus is the only comic strip in the book. Apparently the companions aren't in the Doctor Who magazine comic strip of the time, so this could possibly be the only comic where you'll see Adric, Nyssa and Tegan, though I guess there may have been more in recent years. The Doctor tries out a dream machine which creates images in people's minds. Tegan imagines herself in a field of flowers. Adric wants to try it but doesn't get a chance, which is probably for the best. God knows what his mind would conjure up. Then the TARDIS lands and they get captured by giant termites, but the Doctor uses the dream machine to lead them away and they manage to escape. It's quite a simple story, but the comic strip format is a nice change of pace. It would be nice to have one or two more of those, and you get the sense that it was only made so the artist could draw some giant termites. Next we have the Haven. The TARDIS lands on a paradise planet, which turns out to be full of people who have been cryogenically frozen. It turns out the attendant, Karnak, is using implants to control the frozen corpses and make them do whatever he wants. It's not entirely clear what that is, but you can just imagine. Anyway, the Doctor's mind overpowers Karnak and everybody else remains dead. Next we have an interesting problem page. Imagine you're a member of a space crew scheduled to rendezvous with a mothership on the lighted surface of the moon. Due to mechanical difficulties, your ship is forced to land some 200 miles from the rendezvous point. Much of your equipment is damaged on landing, and since survival means reaching the mothership, you must choose the most critical items to take with you on the 200-mile trip. Listed below are the 15 items left undamaged. You must list them in order of importance in allowing your crew to reach the rendezvous point. Number the most important item 1 and so on to 15. This problem was used by NASA in their training program. Think carefully about your final list, perhaps discussing it with a friend. There is no correct answer. Okay, well this shouldn't be too hard. Food, you need that. Oxygen, water, heat. I'll say oxygen first, then water, then food, then heat. Maybe heat should be before food and water, I'm not sure. Magnetic compass, you need to know where you are. Stellar map, you need to know where you're going. FM radio, you need to contact your mothership. First aid kit, that should probably be a bit higher. Rope, probably need rope to get over the moon's surface. Signal flares, in case he needs help. But to be honest, I'm not sure you need the rest of them. 1 case of dehydrated pet milk. Probably leave that behind. Are there even any pets on the moon? And you can just give them water anywhere. Box of matches, there's no atmosphere. Good luck lighting them. Life raft on the moon, don't be stupid. Parachute silk on the moon, why? 2 45 caliber pistols. Yeah, so I reckon you'd only need the top 10. And you could just dump the rest. Then there's another behind the scenes feature, looking at set design and costume on Cast Revolver, which is the sort of thing you would get in Doctor Who magazine nowadays. So it would have been really interesting to see it at the time. Then another page of brief astronautical features, one about the search for life on Mars, and one about the eventual death of the sun, which won't be for another 5,000 million years, minus the 40 years since the book was published. The penalty is another highlight. The Doctor is stricken with Parnassus fever and spends the entire story battling through a series of nightmares. There's a great sequence where he's confronted by all his old companions. "Hello, Doctor," said a young girl, and she was smiling. "Doctor," echoed a tall, brawny man, not sure who that's meant to be. "Doctor, where have you been?" shouted a young Scot, Jimmy. "Rely on me, Doctor," said another face, not sure who that was. "Goodbye, Doctor, I'll miss you," sobbed a small blonde, possibly Rose. "Take care, Doctor," offered a cheerful-looking man, Harry Sullivan. The Doctor saw the smiles. They were all smiling. All his old friends, smiling, welcoming. But they weren't. They were no longer smiling. "Kill you, Doctor!" screamed the savage with a knife. "Doctor, I'll destroy you!" threatened the military man. "Hate you, Doctor!" echoed the Time Lady. Painful emotions, 1,000 soaring waves of hatred, death and destruction. "No!" screamed the Doctor. "It wasn't like that!" So he basically battles through a series of nightmares before he manages to come to. He vaguely remembered someone describing nightmares as the penalty that has to be paid for enjoying an untroubled day in life. The more adventurous the life, the greater the penalty. The Doctor did not necessarily agree with the description, but it was at times like that that he regretted having adventures that stretched hundreds of years into the past and far into the future, because one thing was for sure: in the time just past, his penalty had been collected. Yeah, it's much better written than most of the stories, and it gives you a fascinating glimpse into the Doctor's mind. To the Far Planets tells you about the deep space probes Pioneer 10 and 11. Then we come to the final story, Night Flight to Nowhere. This feels like an alternate version of Time Flight, as it begins and ends in Heathrow Airport, but there's no mention of the events of Time Flight, so it's not entirely sure where this comes in the canon. Tegan tries to meet up with an old friend from air stewardess school, only to find that she's been replaced by a robot, which sounds a bit like the Faceless Ones, but it turns out it's actually a plot by the Master to replace influential public figures and take over the world. The TARDIS lands on the Master's plane, which is heading straight for the Bermuda Triangle, but the Doctor has a fight with the Master and knocks him out. The plane's about to fly into a hole in space, which is described as a bright red gash several times, but the Doctor manages to save everyone before they're all swallowed up by the gash. So it's a fun little story, and if they made this instead of Time Flight, it could possibly have been a lot better. Finally, there's 2 pages theorising about the possibilities of black holes, saying they may one day allow people to travel through space and time, or possibly not. So it's a definite step up from the 1970s annuals. The stories are generally better written and closer to the TV show. 1 or 2 more comic strips might have been nice to balance it out. But the behind-the-scenes features on the TV show are definitely a good start. They feel much more relevant than the usual general astronomy features. I've already got a copy of the 1984 annual, which I'll be reviewing around about the time that I do the 5 Doctors. And if it's anything like as good as this one, I'll definitely look forward to it. So press subscribe if you want to eventually see that. Or check out the link in the description to see various other videos I've made looking through my annual collection. And I'll see you next time.